30 seconds is exactly how long it took Kara Jennings to put 5 women on wet tile. She weighed 115 pounds and stood 5 feet 2 inches in prison shower shoes. Each woman outweighed her by at least 50 pounds of muscle, rage, and bad intentions stacked high. But this story is not about those 30 seconds of broken wrists and shattered prison hierarchy. This story is about why a woman whose hands could kill spent 6 long years letting herself be beaten. It is about a system dirtier than any blood pooling on that shower floor in rural Georgia tonight. It is about a crooked prosecutor, a dead husband, and a buried truth screaming to crawl into daylight, finally. Before we go deeper, I need you to answer one question in the comments down below right now. How long would you swallow your own power before it erupted and destroyed everything around you completely? Hit subscribe because this story will rewire the way you think about justice and survival forever. 6 weeks before those 30 seconds, a transport van coughed Kara Jennings onto Georgia red clay dust. Holloway Creek Correctional Facility rose from the earth like a concrete tumor baking under August southern sun overhead. Built in 1973, designed for 400 women, currently choking on 562 broken lives. The air tasted like chlorine, rust, and something sweet that nobody wanted to name or even acknowledge existed. Kara stepped out last, wrists cuffed, squinting against light she had not seen in 14 months of counting. A male guard whose name tag read Boyd looked at her the way you look at a stray wandering traffic. Not cruel exactly, just completely indifferent to whether she lived or died inside these crumbling walls here. That indifference, she would later learn, was more dangerous than any fist ever thrown behind these fences. Her first night, she locked herself in the bathroom stall and cut her own hair with commissary scissors. Dark brown strands fell around her feet, like something she was shedding, becoming less visible on deliberate purpose. The other women on Block D watched the new arrival with the instinct of predators assessing a limping deer. They saw the downcast eyes, the thin wrists marked with old rope scars, the way she flinched at noise. Nobody saw the way she walked. That unnatural fluid silence, all footsteps landing toe first like smoke on concrete. Nobody except one person. But we will get to her soon enough when the time comes around. What the women of Block D saw was prey, small and quiet and perfectly shaped for consumption by the hungry. The prison system had delivered fresh meat again, and the hierarchy had a very specific welcoming protocol in place. Tamika Red Washington ran Block D the way a warden runs a prison, except she was more honest about it. 5 feet 10 inches of muscle wrapped in attitude, red-dyed hair cropped close, serving 15 years for armed assault. She controlled the contraband pipeline, decided who slept where, and owned the shower schedule completely, without question. Her power was not complicated. It was built on simple fear and the memory of broken faces past. On Kara's second day, Red took her lunch tray without a word, and nobody at the table blinked. On the third day, Red assigned Kara the bottom bunk nearest the toilet where water leaked all night. On the 5th day, Red stood close enough that Kara could smell menthol cigarettes and said something unprintable. Kara swallowed it all, eyes down, hands loose at her sides, breathing controlled and perfectly even throughout. That same week, a 21-year-old girl named Sophia Reyes arrived shaking like a leaf in winter. First offense, caught stealing prescription medication from a pharmacy for her dying mother back home in Savannah desperately. Sophia had the kind of face that prison eats first, soft and open and completely unaware of danger. While Kara watched her fumble through intake processing and felt something crack open inside her chest like old ice. She saw herself 10 years ago, before Daniel, before the championships, before hands became weapons instead of tools. Without deciding to, Kara started sitting next to Sophia at meals and walking beside her through the yard. She did not explain why, and Sophia did not ask, because sometimes protection does not need words spoken aloud. But Red noticed the connection immediately, filing it away like a blade hidden inside a mattress for later. Then came Lorraine Mama Lou Carter, 63 years old, 22 years served for killing the man raping her daughter. She sat in the yard like a queen on a concrete throne, watching everything with eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Mama Lou watched Kara cross the yard one Tuesday morning, and her coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. She watched the way Kara's weight transferred, the way her feet barely whispered against ground beneath her body. That evening, Mama Lou found Kara alone in the library and sat down across from her without any invitation. "There are two kinds of women here," she said. "Those who break and those who break others completely. You are the third kind, and that is the most dangerous thing walking these halls right now, my dear child." Kara said nothing, but her hands went still and her breathing changed. Mama Lou smiled like someone confirmed. The weeks that followed were a slow escalation designed to find exactly where Kara Jennings would finally snap. Red shoved her in the corridor on Monday, stole her commissary on Wednesday, and humiliated her publicly on Friday. Each time Kara absorbed it, like water hitting stone, no reaction, no flinch, just those downcast gray eyes. Inside her skull, a war raged between the woman she was and the weapon she had been trained to become. She remembered the dojo in Knoxville, shotokan karate, state champion at 22, 3 national finals before Daniel. She remembered Daniel's hands, not training her, but unmaking her. 6 years of bruises hidden under long sleeves carefully. She remembered the night one single strike ended everything and began her sentence long before any courtroom ever convened. And now, Red had started circling Sophia, testing, prodding, isolating her, because Red had finally found the pressure point. The blade was coming for the only person Kara had let herself care about, and the clock was running out fast. The shower floor was still wet with blood when Officer Ray Boyd picked up his pen and began writing. His report described Kara Jennings as the sole aggressor who attacked 5 defenseless women without any provocation whatsoever that evening. He never mentioned the improvised blade that Red pressed against Sophia's throat just moments before everything exploded. He never mentioned the blind spot he had ignored for 7 years of collecting his comfortable government paycheck. Because here is the thing about corrupt systems that most people never truly understand until it is too late. Admitting the truth about Kara meant admitting he knew women were being brutalized in those showers every single week. His signature on that report was not just ink on paper, but a man choosing his pension over justice. The system does not punish violence inside these walls. It punishes anyone who exposes its ugliness to outside light. They dragged Kara to the special housing unit at 11:14 that night, wearing nothing but a wet uniform. The SHU was a concrete box 8 feet by 10 with fluorescent lights that never turned off no matter what. 1 hour of yard time per day, meals through a slot, human contact reduced to hands shoving trays forward. Her appeal hearing was scheduled for 60 days out, but Boyd's report changed the math completely and permanently. Now she faced additional charges for aggravated assault on 5 inmates, which could add 12 more years to her sentence. The woman who defended a helpless girl from a razor blade was now officially classified as the most dangerous. Her attorney had not returned calls in 3 weeks, and the public defender's office had already moved on. But Kara was not thinking about appeals or sentences as she sat on that cold concrete bench that first night. She was thinking about the sound her fist made when it connected with Red's wrist and shattered it. She was thinking about how her body moved through those 30 seconds, like water finding cracks in stone. Every strike precise, every angle calculated, muscle memory from 1,000 tournament rounds flooding back through her completely. Shotokan kata performed on wet tile instead of polished dojo wood, but the physics remained exactly the same. And here is what terrified her more than any additional sentence or any revenge Red might be planning right now. She felt alive in those 30 seconds. More alive than she had felt in 10 years of breathing and existing. The same hands that killed Daniel, the same reflexes, the same calm center that coaches once praised as extraordinary. Was she protecting Sophia, or was she finally letting the leashed thing inside her run free and hunt? 300 miles north in Atlanta, a 29-year-old attorney named Megan Sullivan opened a new case file. She worked for Survived and Punished, a volunteer organization representing women imprisoned for surviving domestic violence and abuse. Kara's file landed on her desk as routine intake, but something snagged her attention like a fishhook. Second-degree murder conviction, despite documented history of domestic violence that should have supported clear self-defense claims easily. Megan pulled the trial transcripts and found them thin, almost suspiciously streamlined, missing pieces that should exist. No photographs of Kara's injuries from the night Daniel died were entered into evidence at trial anywhere. No emergency room records, despite neighbors confirming ambulances had visited that house at least 4 separate times before. Someone had cleaned this case file the way you clean a crime scene, deliberately and with professional precision. Megan found the missing emergency room nurse in a trailer park outside Savannah 3 weeks into her investigation. Patricia Bowen remembered Kara Jennings because you do not forget a woman whose husband tied her wrists with rope. Patricia had photographs she kept copies of and medical records she duplicated because something felt wrong even then. She agreed to sign an affidavit, but 48 hours later called Megan back with a shaking voice. Someone visited her trailer, someone who knew where her grandchildren attended school and what time they walked home. The thread led Megan to prosecutor Harold Tinsley, who convicted Kara and was now campaigning for a judgeship. Tinsley and Daniel Jennings belonged to the same Masonic lodge in Chatham County for over a decade together. He had buried the photographs, suppressed the medical records, and silenced the neighbor who heard screams for years. But Megan's next discovery made everything before it looked like a warm-up for the real horror show. Bank records showed monthly payments from a shell company linked to Tinsley flowing directly into Boyd's personal checking account. The prosecutor was paying the prison guard to keep Kara isolated in the SHU and provoke additional disciplinary violations. Tinsley was not just covering old tracks anymore. He was actively destroying the only witness to his corruption. If Kara's appeal succeeded and her case reopened, every buried photograph would surface and end his career permanently. Kara thought she was fighting a prison, but the prison was merely the smallest cage surrounding her broken life. Meanwhile, inside Block D, something far worse was happening to the one person Kara would die to protect. Sophia Reyes received transfer papers to Red's section of Block D, signed by Boyd himself on a Tuesday morning. Mama Lou smuggled a note to the SHU that read 3 words, and those 3 words almost broke Kara completely. Sophia moved Block D, the note said, and Kara's fist hit the concrete wall before her brain caught up. Her knuckles split open, and blood ran down the same hands that started this entire catastrophic chain of events. She understood now with sickening clarity that her isolation was never punishment. It was strategy designed with surgical precision. Keep her locked away from the only person she would fight for while that person was fed to wolves. Red wanted revenge, and Sophia was the instrument. A 21-year-old girl who stole medicine for her mother. Through letters smuggled by Mama Lou, Megan fed Kara every detail, names, dates, dollar amounts, the entire conspiracy. Kara memorized it all because tomorrow she would not need fists. She would need her voice and every fact. Mama Lou approached during yard hour, looked directly into Kara's eyes, and said one single word, tomorrow. Mama Lou spent 22 years learning how to break a system from inside its own belly. She chose the loudest woman on Block C to throw the first lunch tray at exactly noon sharp. Tables flipped like dominoes, and 300 women turned the cafeteria into a hurricane of screaming flesh. Every available guard sprinted toward the noise because protocol demanded all hands on deck for riots. Mama Lou caught an elbow to the jaw and smiled through blood because chaos was the only currency here. She risked additional years on her sentence for a woman she had known barely 6 weeks total. But that told you everything about Kara Jennings that words could never capture or explain properly. Some people make you brave just by existing near you without ever asking for anything back. The cafeteria burned with noise, while one corridor went silent as a held breath waiting. Kara moved through the empty hallway with feet that barely whispered against cold concrete beneath her. The SHU door had been left unsecured when guards rushed toward the cafeteria riot in panic. Every muscle in her body screamed to turn left toward Block D, where Sophia was breathing. Her hands clenched so hard that reopened knuckles painted red crescents on both her trembling palms. But she turned right instead toward the administrative corridor, where one camera still functioned properly overhead. This was the hardest fight of her life, and she would win it without throwing a single punch. 10 years ago, her hands chose violence, and it cost her everything she had ever loved or wanted. And tonight, those same hands stayed open at her sides as she walked toward a blinking red light. She stopped beneath the camera and looked directly into its glass eye without blinking once. Her voice came out quiet and level with that same surgical calm that made Red stop laughing. Officer Ray Boyd receives monthly payments from a shell company linked to prosecutor Harold Tinsley directly. The amounts total $14,000 over 18 months deposited into his personal checking account regularly. Prosecutor Tinsley suppressed emergency room photographs showing rope burns and fractures from Daniel Jennings' abuse. He buried testimony from neighbor Margaret Chen, who heard screams from that house for 6 years. He destroyed Patricia Bowen's medical records because they proved self-defense beyond any reasonable doubt completely. Kara spoke dates and dollar amounts from memory, while footsteps began echoing somewhere down the corridor fast. Boyd appeared at the corridor's end, and his face went white as prison laundry bleached overnight. Not anger, but the naked terror of a man watching his entire comfortable life collapse in seconds. He lunged for the camera's power cable, but Kara kept talking with mechanical precision and perfect recall. She named the Masonic Lodge in Chatham County, where Tinsley and Daniel drank together every Thursday. She named the judge who expedited her sentencing because he owed Tinsley a favor from way back. Boyd's fingers found the cable and ripped it from the wall with a sound like breaking bone. The red light died, but Kara had been speaking for 93 seconds into that camera lens already. The question that would keep you awake tonight is whether 93 seconds was enough to matter. 3 blocks away, Sophia Reyes sat on a bunk in Red's territory, waiting for violence that never came. Red stood by the window watching the cafeteria chaos below with arms crossed and jaw tight. The other women in Red's crew watched their leader for the signal to move on the girl. But Red never gave it because something broke inside her hierarchy the night the shower floor turned red. 4 of her strongest soldiers went down in 30 seconds to a woman half their combined size. The women who once obeyed without question now exchanged glances that said maybe Red bleeds too, actually. Sophia survived not because Kara ran with fists, but because one act of courage reshapes entire ecosystems. Kara did not defeat Red in that shower. She defeated the idea that small people break quietly. Megan Sullivan filed an emergency motion for the surveillance footage before the prison could legally destroy any recordings. The administration's own regulations required 72-hour retention, and Megan's request arrived at hour 41. When the footage reached her laptop in Atlanta, she watched it 4 times and cried on the 5th viewing. She uploaded it to 3 separate cloud servers because evidence has a way of vanishing around Harold Tinsley. Within a week, every major outlet in Georgia ran the story of the woman who fought a system on camera. Tinsley withdrew his candidacy for judge at a press conference, where his hands shook visibly the entire time. Boyd was terminated, and an investigation opened into payments that traced back through 3 shell companies completely. Patricia Bowen, the emergency room nurse, finally testified under protection because courage is contagious when someone goes first. Kara walked out of the courthouse on a Tuesday morning in November with the sun hitting her face directly. The conviction was reclassified as justifiable self-defense, and time served was credited against everything owed. Not a fairy tale acquittal, because the system never gives you clean victories or apologies for stolen years. Sophia waited on the courthouse steps, released 3 months earlier for good behavior and a clean record. Megan stood beside her, holding a folder of paperwork that smelled like freedom tastes after a decade. Kara stopped on the top step and, for the first time in years, lifted her eyes toward open sky. 3 months later, she stood in a small gym in South Atlanta wearing a white kimono before teenagers. Girls from broken homes bowed when she bowed, and she showed them the first stance and smiled. Her hands that killed and her hands that protected now became hands that teach strength to others. And somewhere tonight, in prisons across America, women sit in cells for the crime of fighting back. Not statistics, but breathing women with names and scars and stories the system would prefer you never hear. How many of them are waiting for their 30 seconds, and will anyone be watching the camera when it comes?